Laravel gives us all the tools we need to localize our application, to translate a readable text into a variety of languages, to support different number and currency formats. But one thing it doesn't really specify for us is how to let the user pick what language they want to see. Or how could we set that language automatically based on some settings? Today, I want to show you a very simple approach that just involves a single middleware. And hopefully this will inspire you to add localization to your application and to do so in a meaningful way. So let's take a look at the code together. Here we have the middleware that I'm talking about, and it's just called localization. And it's doing a couple things, and so I want to walk through the code line by line to make sure you understand it. And then we'll take a look at a demo to see it work in action. So the first thing to note is that it's looking at the request query string for a parameter called language. If that is present, that is going to win. So if we set lang equals ES for Spanish, that's what it's going to set. Now the next thing it's doing is it's using an enum. So we have a language enum set up that has all the languages our application supports. It wants to make sure that what they specify in that language query string is a language we support. If it's not, we just ignore it. But assuming those two things are true, a language is present in the query string and it's a language we support in our enum, all it does is it puts that language into the session. Now, I'm using a session key interface here just to kind of avoid magic strings. So we could just as easily have said something like language here, but we're going to use this throughout our application, I'm sure. So I just like to have it in one spot. I don't make it an enum because it's not really one of a variety of things we're picking from. But this interface-based approach just has some public constant strings in it, and I can use that throughout my application. So I'm just setting the language they gave us in the query string in the session, and then in this case, we'd skip over that. So then the last thing it does is it just sets the locale to that language. That's it. So that's one scenario. The second scenario, what if they come to our application without a query string? Okay, so we're going to skip over this else if block and we'll look at the else block. Now it's just looking in the session. Do we have a session language already set? If we do, let's use that. If not, we'll just use the fallback locale. And in a default Laravel application, that's English. You can, of course, override that in your env to match your needs. But that's the second path. So it's either going to get one from the session because it was already set in a previous request, or it's just going to use the default, which in our case is going to be English. And then after that, it's going to set it. So those are the three scenarios. Either we're coming to the app for the first time, we don't have the session set, we don't have the query string set, or we have a query string set, or we have a session set. So let's look at a demo, and then we'll come back and look at this code in more detail. So in this demo I put together, we just have a single word that's being translated, hello. And so I'm hitting this for the first time. It's using English as my default. Now, if I were to set manually, just type out lang equals French. That's one of the three languages I support. Now it translates it for me. And you notice it also shows that my current locale is French. And this little language picker, we'll talk about that in a second, is also defaulting to French. But watch this. If I take that query string away and now I just refresh this page, I'm still in French. So that it's been set in the session. Now I can navigate throughout the rest of the site. And unless I make a change, I'm going to stay with French. This is also a nice approach too, because maybe you're sending an email and you know that that email is localized to French because that user prefers French. Now you can build right into the links that lang equals French. And because this is a middleware, as long as it's applied to the routes, all of the routes in our application, it's going to work no matter what link we sent them to. So this is a really nice, simple approach. Let's just talk a little bit about this picker. So if I pick Espanol, see how all it does is it basically redirects me to the page, setting that query string. This is a drop dead simple user interface element, but now it's set. Now it's in because of my middleware. Now it's set in my session and it's going to work. So let's go back to the code now that we've seen this work. And let's look at the last two pieces that we need here. So of course, this middleware won't do us any good if we don't wire it up. So in our Bootstrap app, we have to set the localization, and I'm just putting it in the whole web group. I want it on every single route. I don't want to have to remember to wire this up in my routes file, route by route. And then I have, we were hitting /hello. This is just a view-based route. And here's my view. And see, all I'm doing here is just using the Laravel translation helper that I'm given, this __ method. And then the language selector and a little bit of JavaScript. Like, that part's not really important. You can customize that whatever you want in your application. You may want to let them have a settings panel where they set their default language, and that's stored in the database. And when they log in, it just loads it. You might not want to have any user interface element to give them a language to pick outside of that. Totally up to you. This is just a starting point for you to think about when building your application and knowing how would I let them set the user. This is a very simple approach. Hope you found it useful.